For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. The pregame warm-up. It's an essential part of the preparation that a team has for the game that they're about to play. It's a chance for them to stretch and get loosened up. It's a chance for them to run a few plays. It's a chance for quarterbacks to warm up their arm, and for special teams players, it's a chance for them to test out how far they can kick, which way the wind is blowing, what their range is, and they get a gauge on how to play things over the course of the next 3 hours. Now, occasionally, there will be some flare-ups between the two teams, where things get heated and a fight breaks out, or there's a verbal altercation. And I've talked about that in a previous video of mine, where one player even so much as got ejected for something that happened during the pregame warm-ups. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, excluding situations where one team is going at it with the other team, when it's just your team, there is usually nothing to note from these warm-ups. Over 99.99% of the time, nothing happens. It's business as usual. Occasionally, you'll see a guy get hurt during the warm-ups, but that's something like a pulled hamstring or something that can happen at any time. And then, we have the situation that occurred involving this man right here. Because I have to ask you this all-important question. How the heck do you lose not one, but two starters for not just the game, but for the entire season during pregame warm-ups? Imagine if the San Francisco 49ers were warming up for a game. Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams were fully healthy. And the next thing you know, based on something that happened in the warm-ups, they are now both out for the season. Imagine if the Philadelphia Eagles were warming up for a game, Lane Johnson and A.J. Brown were fully healthy, and the next thing you know, based on something that happened in the warm-ups, they are now both out for the season. Well, that's exactly what happened in 1980 with the Kansas City Chiefs, and this man right here, wide receiver Stan Rome, along with their starting right tackle, Charlie Getty. Because prior to a 1980 game against the San Diego Chargers, and a big one at that, the Chiefs lost two of their starters before the game even started, not just for the all-important divisional game at hand, but for the entire season. And the way that it happened is absolutely bizarre and deserves a deep dive today more than 4 decades later. Because this is the story behind one of the craziest injuries in the over 60-year history of the Kansas City Chiefs franchise. Before I talk about the injury in question and just how insane it was, because truly, I've never seen anything like this, we need some context to understand the game at hand, and its importance for the Chiefs, because they could not have anything go wrong here. And as we're about to find out, yeah, that was not the case at all. It's November 16th, 1980. It's week 11 of the NFL season. And as we're in the second half of the year, we've got a big AFC West battle on our hands between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Diego Chargers. This isn't just a big game as the Chiefs look to avoid getting swept following a 24-7 loss to the Chargers in week 4, but it's a big game because this feels like a must-win if the Chiefs are going to have any shot at making the playoffs. Somehow, after an 0-4 start, the Chiefs enter this game as one of the hottest teams in football, having won 5 of their last 6, including their most recent game, a 31-30 win over the Seattle Seahawks. No team had ever made it to the playoffs after an 0-4 start, but the Chiefs actually had a decent chance to become the first team to do so, provided that they won this game. The Chiefs enter this one 2 back of the Oakland Raiders for first place in the AFC West, and 2 back of the Houston Oilers and New England Patriots at 7-3 for a wildcard spot. Win this game, and you can maintain pace for the division hunt and the wildcard hunt. Lose this game, and you basically have no room for error the rest of the way if you want to have any chance at making the playoffs. You have to win out, winning your final 5, and then you have to hope for a lot of luck along the way. Could Kansas City get above 500 for the first time all season and pull off the upset on the road against the Chargers? Well, not quite. In fact, not even close. Because this game for the Chiefs, as you can probably tell from the highlights, was ugly with a capital U. Even though the Chiefs started out alright, taking a 7-0 lead in the first quarter after a 4-yard touchdown run by quarterback Steve Fuller, and even though the Chiefs actually led it at the half, winning 7-6 by that point, they couldn't do much of anything, as this game was all Chargers. When the final whistle sounded, the Chargers were on top, as they won the game 20-7 after scoring the final 20 points of the game. San Diego had triple the first downs that Kansas City had, winning that battle 30-10. San Diego had more than double the rushing yards that Kansas City had, winning that battle 171-75. San Diego had more than double the yardage that Kansas City had, winning that battle 383-183. Whereas the Chiefs put the ball on the ground 6 times, the Chargers never did. Whereas the Chiefs turned it over 3 times, the Chargers only turned it over once. And Chiefs quarterback Steve Fuller got sacked 5 times, which was the second most sacks he suffered in a game all season, though it pales in comparison to the whopping 10 sacks he suffered just a few weeks before in a loss to the Baltimore Colts. Long story short, this was a long day at the office for the Chiefs, and their playoff hopes, and their season for that matter, took a massive blow due to this anemic performance, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Which raises the question, why was the performance so bad? Well, it's not the sole reason for the performance. I'm not saying that if the Chiefs had the players in question that we're going to talk about, that they would win this game by any means. But it definitely didn't help matters much, and it set the tone for the entire day. Because this man right here is wide receiver Stan Rome. Remember how I said that the Chiefs won their last game before this one 31-30 over the Seattle Seahawks? Well, you can thank Rome for that, as he had the catch that probably saved Kansas City's season, as right as Steve Fuller is about to take a safety, with the Chiefs trailing 30-24 and under 4 minutes left in the game, he throws deep and hits Rome, giving the team some breathing room and eventually providing the spark for that game-winning touchdown. Rome hadn't done a lot in the NFL by this point since being drafted in the 11th round of the 1979 NFL Draft out of Clemson, but it seemed as though he was starting to get more involved in the offense, having a catch in each of the last 2 games. There were even some indications that if the Chiefs opened up in a 3-wide set, that he was going to start the game as the 3rd wideout alongside Henry Marshall and J.T. Smith. So you would figure that he would play a prominent part in the game plan for this all-important Chargers game, and might have something to do with the success or failure of the Chiefs on this day, right? Well, even if that was the plan, even the best laid plans of mice and men go awry. Because while that plan might have sounded good on paper, that piece of paper had to be crumbled up and thrown into the fire pit after the pregame warmups. If you've ever been to a stadium early enough and have gotten to see the players warm up, usually, before they congregate together as a team, they work out in their own positional groups. You'll have defensive linemen warming up and working on their get-off speed. You'll have offensive linemen in the end zone warming up and working on their get-off speed. You'll have cornerbacks getting thrown passes, and most notably, you'll have a quarterback on one side of the field and a quarterback on the other side of the field, with receivers running routes between quarterbacks. This is done as a time-saving measure. Instead of having the receiver run a 30-yard route and then go all the way back and get in line, they can just stay on that side of the field and run a 30-yard route the other way when it's their turn again. 2 reps for the price of 1. Now, there is no video of the event, which is not too shocking, considering the fact that little footage of the Chiefs-Chargers game as it is even exists. And even if it did, I'm not sure that this would have been caught on camera and everything would have been rolling, since this happened quite a bit before the game. However, based on my knowledge of these things, and based on the eyewitness accounts, here's a diagram of what I'm going to presume happened. You have the offensive linemen warming up in the back of the end zone, and you have the wide receivers right around the 40. I'm guessing that in the end zone, you had Bill Kenny, the backup quarterback, and Tom Clements, the 3rd-string quarterback, throwing passes to receivers when they ran from the end zone to the 30. And at the 40, you had a coach and Steve Fuller throwing the passes. Again, if you've ever seen teams warming up before and have gotten to the stadium early enough, which I have done many, many times, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, on one of the passes, Fuller completely missed the mark. I'm not sure how, seeing as he was a fairly accurate quarterback in 1980, completing over 60% of his passes, which was 7th in the NFL, and seeing as it wasn't bad weather, as it was perfectly sunny and the winds were in the single digits from a speed standpoint. But regardless, Fuller missed his target. He was looking for Stan Rome in the end zone, and in the process, completely overshot him and led him in the wrong direction. And with offensive lineman and starting right tackle Charlie Getty warming up in the back of the end zone, and Rome running full speed to track a ball that was never in his vicinity, completely unaware of his surroundings, Rome collided with Getty. Friendly fire with his own teammate in a pregame warmup. Said Chiefs head coach Marv Levy, right tackle Charlie Getty was warming up in the back of the end zone. Rome was going after a pass and ran out of the end zone, and they collided. And when it came to this man right here, Stan Rome, I don't mean that he just fell to the ground, but he got back up and everything was okay. I mean that he was down in serious pain. Reports said that Rome was down for over 10 minutes while the Chiefs tried to attend to him. Turns out, this wasn't a strain or a bump or anything like that. This was all-out ligament damage in his knee. Stan Rome, who was likely going to play a big part in the offense, was now out for the game. And it wasn't just him who was out. The man he ran into, Charlie Getty, had to be hospitalized as a result, as he suffered a nosebleed that would not stop, and would not fly back with the team, and would actually be hospitalized for an entire week as a result. Just like that, in a simple warm-up, the Chiefs lost their number 3 wide receiver and their starting right tackle on a complete fluke play and a throw gone horribly wrong. Said quarterback Steve Fuller, that was a bad way to start the day. It was just one of those freak things. I was throwing the ball, so I felt a little responsible for what happened. You really hate to see that kind of thing happen. Now, as bizarre as this whole thing was, if this man right here, Stan Rome, and offensive tackle Charlie Getty were able to come back the following week, alright. It's obviously not ideal that they had to miss some time, especially Getty, who started all 16 games for the Chiefs at right tackle in 1979. But it's a one-game thing. And even if it might not happen like that exact scenario, players do get injured in pregame warmups. Again, it's usually a hamstring pull and something of their own doing, and not friendly fire with 2 men colliding into each other, but injuries can happen. But nope, this was so bad that the Chiefs, through a pregame warm-up throw, lost both Stan Rome and Charlie Getty for the entire season. That's right, Rome and Getty were out for the rest of the year. If the Chiefs were going to make the playoffs and win their games in the second half of November and the month of December, they were going to have to do it without their number 3 wideout and their starting right tackle. Rome was placed on IR shortly after the incident happened, thereby missing the entire season. And after missing 3 consecutive games with a broken blood vessel in his nose, which I can tell you as someone that went through that, is not fun at all, as I can still vividly remember my nose bleeding non-stop for hours on end and the pain that it caused, Getty was ruled out for the entire season and was placed on IR. Getty missed the final 6 games, and Rome missed the final 6 games, all because of what happened in one freak play in warmups, the likes of which I've never seen before. As for what happened after the game between these 2 teams behind me right here, the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Diego Chargers, the Chiefs would end the season with an 8-8 record, as they were unable to do much of anything the rest of the way. I suppose 8-8 isn't terrible, considering the fact that they started the season 0-4, but still it was a bit disappointing, considering the fact that they did have playoff aspirations at one point during the season. If it's any consolation, even if the Chiefs won out, they still would not have made the playoffs, as every single team to make the postseason in 1980 in the AFC had a record of 11-5. It was absolutely crazy. The AFC was stacked that year, and I talked about that in a previous video of mine, so you can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. As for the 2 men involved in the collision during the pregame warmups, Charlie Getty would play in the NFL until 1983. He would come back in 1981, and he would last with Kansas City until 1982, before playing his final season in 83 with the Green Bay Packers. And Stan Rome, he would play with the Chiefs until 1982, although his NFL career would end in 1982 after the strike-shortened season. Today, Stan Rome might be best known for two things. One, he called the final touchdown ever at Metropolitan Stadium. He's actually a member of the One Touchdown Club, as this play right here, a 15-yard touchdown grab in the third quarter of Week 16 of the 1981 season against the Minnesota Vikings, not only gave the Chiefs a 10-6 win, but meant that his only touchdown ever was the final touchdown at the Met before they tore down the building. But two, he's known for what has to be one of the flukiest injuries in the history of not just the Kansas City Chiefs, but the entire NFL. Again, it's always bizarre as it is when guys get injured during pregame warmups and our last-minute scratches. But it's never anything like this. It's never a guy being down for 10 minutes after colliding with the starting right tackle, leading to both guys missing the entire season and derailing a team's playoff hopes as a result. Because when it came to Charlie Getty and the man you've been watching this whole time, Stan Rome, Rome wasn't built in one day, but it was definitely destroyed in one play. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.